This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys Network. Here's your host, Will Hill.
Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, John Laghezza of The Athletic will join us. We will talk some Major League Baseball, maybe talk a little NFL. He is a great handicapper, really solid with analytics, but he always has interesting things to say. First-time guest, excited to have him on. So we will talk a lot of baseball with him and see what he thinks of some of these races. But I'll actually start with some college football because, believe it or not, and we did some college football and some baseball the other day. Chris Fleek, I urge people to go back and listen to that. We have some games this week, and I don't know what kind of show I'll do Friday, so just break it up a little bit. Doing a lot of baseball. I'll do a lot of baseball with John coming up in a minute, but I just want to get into some of these games. We have 4 games on Saturday. Now, look, football is back. Happy to have it back. These are real games that count. That being said, 4 games. This is not exactly it's not exactly Michigan, Ohio State here on Saturday. It starts at noon in Ireland. The game is in Ireland, noon Eastern. Florida State laying 10.5 now to Georgia Tech. A lot of people have been betting Georgia Tech. That line was like 13, 14. That's the one good game. Florida State, top 10-ish team. Top 10, I think, is where they start. Georgia Tech, another ACC team. So that's a decent game. Total 55.5. And then you get to 4 o'clock Eastern, and you have Montana State, the FCS team, 1AA team, Montana State, laying 11 on the road in New Mexico, total 54. Then you have the 8 o'clock game, SMU in Nevada, SMU minus 25. SMU is a team a lot of people like, a team I like. I think they're good on offense, good on defense there now. And if you haven't been paying attention, if you're just kind of, getting around to the new world of college football, SMU, believe it or not, is in the ACC now, which is look, you think of the ACC, you think of Coach K, and you think of Dean Smith, and you think of SMU football. But that's the just new reality of all these conferences. SMU laying 25, but they've got a lot of talent back, and they have a pretty easy schedule. They don't have to play 4 of the top 5 teams in the ACC, and the one team they do play that's the top 5 or so, Florida State. That game is in SMU, so SMU is a team to keep an eye on. I think 12-1 to win the ACC. That number has come down a bit. I think that's a sleeper team. But laying 25 on the road against Nevada, I'm not sure about that one. And then Hawaii laying 39 in the get out of jail game. You've had a bad day and you try to get it all back in the Hawaii game. Well, you have your chance here. Hawaii against Delaware State, and Delaware State has apparently had trouble getting to Hawaii. They missed a bus or something. Now they missed their flight, so they're gonna have to figure out a way to get to Hawaii, which is gonna be, that is midnight East Coast, and Delaware obviously on the East Coast. So that they're playing a game midnight body clock, and then they turn around, they play Sacred Heart the following week. And I know we're getting into the weeds here, but that's what we're dealing with week 0. So that is about as tough a spot as you can have for Delaware State. Hawaii ticking up to a 40-point favorite in some spots, 39 at DraftKings. We'll see if they can get to the game. Not easy getting a college football team and their program, coaches, trainers. I'm sure they're bringing the cheerleaders, everybody. It's not easy to just find 120, 130 people. Hey, let's find a last minute flight to Hawaii for 130 people. Not that easy. We'll see how they get there and what happens. So that's an interesting development. I guess I'll just talk about the one big game, the one big-ish game, the Florida State game. Georgia Tech returns a lot of talent on offense, like 85% of their returning offense. Their quarterback, a lot of their skill guys, so they should be able to score. I just don't know how good they are defensively. In Florida State is well coached. They're going to have enough back, I think, on offense. I think both teams move the ball. I would look at over 55.5. I don't want to take the 10.5 here when you could have had 11, 12, 13 or whatever. And I just think it's a game where like Florida State is up, 14, 17 late, and maybe Georgia Tech has the ball with a chance at a backdoor. But I do think this is like 34-24, 38-24 type of game. I think Florida State will score a lot of points. I don't know that Georgia Tech can slow them down. But I'm not looking to lay double digits here on a neutral field, and that's another thing to keep an eye on. It's in Ireland, may or may not rain. The field conditions on these fields where they don't host a lot of football games can be a little tricky. So that's the Florida State Georgia Tech game. New Mexico, Montana State. I don't know how you lay 11 with a 1AA team on the road, but people are doing it. I guess this line opened at 3, got up to 7, and it jumped again today where Montana State's laying 11. I know New Mexico is not a good team, and they're not expected to have a big year. But my goodness, you got to expect they at least know the spread and say, "Hey, we're a Division I team playing a 1AA team. We're home and we're getting 11." If that can provide any bulletin board material, I'd only look at New Mexico. I'd only look at taking the 11. So I don't have anything on the other 2 games with the big spreads. And like I said, it's football. It's back. It's not exactly Alabama versus Georgia, these 4 games, but it's nice to have on the background. It's nice to just know that These games count. They're here. And next week you get some better games: Florida, Miami, Georgia, Clemson. You get Thursday night games with Colorado against North Dakota State. That should be interesting. Minnesota, North Carolina. So college football is back, and NFL not that far behind. We got and look, once you get these games back, it's just there's so many of them, so many college games Sunday, and everything that happening with the pennant race is just a great time of the year for sports. Speaking of that, and we'll talk baseball here in a minute. Luis Gil has been bad lately for the Yankees. He leaves the game with back tightness. So I've mentioned how the Yankees and Orioles are just sort of twins, mirror image of each other. The Orioles acquired Zach Eflin, the pitcher from the Rays, right around the trade deadline. He was 4-0 for the Orioles, is 4-0 for the Orioles. He goes on the IL with a shoulder strain. So the Orioles can't keep their pitchers healthy, and these teams just seem to go back and forth with, closer issues, pitching injury issues, hot at the same time, cold at the same time. So nobody's pulled away yet. I don't know that anybody pulls away in that race, but Gil has been bad. Yankees just don't have great pitching. It's funny, as wide open as these races are, as wide open it is once you get in, and the Yankees will be in the playoffs. You would think you can say, hey, as long as you get in, anybody can win. I have a very hard time seeing the Yankees, and really, I'm starting to throw Baltimore in the mix. Yankees don't have enough pitching to actually win 3 series and win a championship, or 4 series if they don't win the division. And Baltimore, with all of these pitchers hurt, Grayson Rodriguez and Wells and Means and Bradish. I mean, basically 5 of their top 6 pitchers are 5 of their top 6 starters are hurt, starting pitchers. So it's just hard to win a championship without pitching. If you don't have a great rotation, you need a great bullpen. If you don't have a great bullpen, you need a really good rotation. It's just hard to be lacking in both, and especially the Yankees, but both these teams have a ton of pitching issues. So we will see what John Laghezza thinks of that and a lot more. We got college football to look forward to. So we'll talk some NFL, talk some baseball. John Laghezza, that is next. This is Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast. You can catch him. I first listened to him on VSiN on a numbers game with Gil Alexander, but you can catch him at The Athletic, and he now works for NB Fantasy Life. It is John Laghezza. John, thanks for finally coming on. Long overdue. I apologize for that, but happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. This is so cool. I said it off air. I'll say it on air. It's kind of a pinch me moment. I'm a late bloomer in this game, and to be working with the people I've kind of looked up to and followed for so long it's really, really cool. So hopefully I won't faceplant.
I appreciate it. You and I are both Yankee guys. I think I'm angrier about the Yankees just in general, not signing free agents, trade deadline being a little passive. When I hear your spots, you seem to be more glass half full guy. But with that being mine, where are you with the Yankees? Where are you with this AL East race?
Well, that's funny. You must have only heard half of it. It depends. I do try and keep that stuff in. You know how it is when you cover sports and you have a favorite team, people kind of get in your case sometimes. I've been outwardly rough on the Yankees because, again, moving Jordan Montgomery for Harrison Bader, which ended up being a bag of balls, that didn't work out. Bringing in Montas, sending out Sears, right? That ended up being a bag of balls. That was another kind of kick, downtown where you wish you had Montgomery and Sears, guys like that. So, yeah, I would have liked to see them maybe make different moves, maybe make more moves. Man, I could go on and on because we've had Sonny Gray pass through here. We've had Lance Lynn pass through here. They both had probably career worst years here and then complained about the developmental processes that go on here, right? Sonny Gray was very clear about that he wanted to throw the slider. They were trying to force the sweeper. We get it. The sweeper is cool, but humans are what they are. If this guy has a craft going on, I wouldn't mess with it. Now look, Gray, one of the best pitchers on a per inning basis. So the Yankees are probably lucky to be where they are. They're also extremely top heavy. They kind of remind me of those early 2000 Red Sox teams with David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez. 2 lefty, righty nightmares. Just an absolute nightmare, enough to swing a game. But other than that, it gets kind of messy. So as far as my Yankees outlook go, especially the way the bullpen's been, I'm a little bit worried, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's such a wide open year where, I mean, I've been saying this and it's nothing profound. Hey, if you get in, anything can happen. Keel's talked about Royals could play the Diamondbacks. I mean, you pick any combination. That being said, I'd actually be surprised if the Yankees make a deep run in October, just because so much of it is in these October games, these close games, 2-2 after 5 or 6 innings. And what do you have in the bullpen for the Yankees? It's a lot of, Tommy Kahnle and Luke Weaver, who's been fine, but Clay Holmes, you better yeah, you better hope if you have a 1-run lead that he comes in and somebody hits 3-line drives at somebody, because he's just not going to fool anybody. I just don't like their bullpen, so I don't actually think they're that live. That being said, do you think they win the division? Do you favor Baltimore? Baltimore's not a great team either. We're recording this before the Tuesday game, so it seems like for the last month or so, neither team can really get out of their own way.
Yeah, nobody seems to want to win this thing. But I think the problem, it's a common thread. The one thing we didn't mention yet, it's the starting pitchers. And, how do you get to that fifth or sixth inning? It's on the back of starters. The front end stuff for the Yankees has been spotty at best. Cole, I guess, maybe turned the corner. Rodon cannot be relied on. Louis Hill looks really good. But let's be honest, this team with the big payroll and all the expectations, he was not supposed to be your number 2 guy. The wheels have kind of fallen off for Stroman. Again, there's a lot of holes for the Yankees. Baltimore, Corbin Burns looks great. After that, I mean, the Rodgers move, absolutely shocked me. They had sent down Cade Povich, brought him back. I like him better than I like Trevor Rogers. They had cut Cole Irvin, who I like better than I like Trevor Rogers. So it just goes to speak for that. The thirst for starting pitching, that's good luck finding it. So I don't love either one of these teams to make the deep run, like you said. Maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but very hard to try and mash your way through the playoffs, if that makes sense, right? It's very hard to bludgeon your way through the playoffs against these, front-end starters, and then generally the teams that make the playoffs have wipeout bullpens, right? These guys are throwing 90-mile-an-hour sliders with 101 gas up at the eyes. Yeah, I don't think the World Series winner is coming from the AL East, tell you that.
Yeah, and I could live without one of the two. I agree. You need pitching. If you had a really good rotation, I could live with a shaky bullpen. If you had shaky rotation, I could live with live with it that way. If I had a good bullpen, you got to give me one of the other two. You can't have a shaky rotation and a shaky bullpen. It's just you got to get 27 outs in these playoff games. I just don't know if they have the arms to do it.
I don't.
Any other races interest you from a betting perspective? It looks like I said this the other day. I think, and again, we're recording this before the Tuesday games. I think we might have our 12 teams right now. I know Atlanta's all sort of beat up, and maybe that's the team that loses the rope. But Yankees, Guardians, and Astros, and then whoever doesn't win the division, so Orioles or Yankees, and then Royals and Twins are probably your 6. And then in the National League, Dodgers, Phillies, Brewers, 2 teams from the West. And then I'll still say the Braves, which are the team right now. Mets have a tough stretch coming up. Would you agree we have our 12? Does anybody invade this that's not in right now?
Well, I think you nailed it most of the way. Gil and I were actually just speaking about this. So I think 11 of 12 are basically locked and loaded. That Brave spot, it's a little too soon, right? We got to be just shy of 40 games remaining back of the napkin math. Mets are 1.5 behind. This is that third playoff spot, and the Giants are 3.5 out. Believe it or not, it's actually the Giants I might be just as worried about. So when you're talking about multiple teams within striking distance, one series, it's anybody's guess. I mean, do we get this iteration of Blake Snell every 5 days on the way out? And if so, pairing him with Logan Webb starts to remind you of what a winning playoff rotation looks like, right? That short, very short rotation. Again, Logan Webb, in this age of betting and fantasy and prop betting and stuff, guys like Webb kind of fall, to the background because they don't have the blistering cheese and they don't get all the big strikeouts. But if you needed 8 innings tomorrow, right? He's got to be on the shortest list of guys to get you 24 outs in one outing. So I actually think it's the Giants. Not to get too granular, they could probably stand to hit right-handers a little bit better. I thought moving Soler looked like a sell job, right? You probably needed to add into it. But we'll see. Again, Mets, for a stretch, they were the best team, offensively at least, in the league. We've also seen them go through stretches with the worst bullpen in the league. So, I don't know. It's really still anybody's game, I think, that last spot. But 11 and 12 are locked.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's funny. I kind of forgotten they traded Soler to the Braves, and that's kind of the team they're chasing.
Why?
I know.
Well, I don't get it, man. Yeah, the Braves, like you mentioned, well, Soler just went down, and now Riley's season is finished. They were already struggling. It's going to be really hard to bank on them. You put a lot on Michael Harris and Jared Kelenic, players that are very good, that I think are probably better suited to be the secondary or tertiary pieces on a great winning team. I think Atlanta, the injury bug just snake bit them too hard.
Yep, totally agree. And they had that stretch last week where they started the series. They had a bad loss against Detroit on that
It was
Sunday, lost by a
happening.
run. They were playing. So I was like, all right, you know what? You live with it. But they had Atlanta coming to their building, only trailing by a game and a half. And they lost a 1-0 game, then like a 2-1. They lost like 2 or 3 days in a row by a run where, when you're trying to make up ground and you're coming from way behind like the Giants are, you just can't afford those stretches. So I don't know that they overcome that, but I guess they are still within shouting distance, especially the Braves. Like they've got a bunch of games against the Phillies coming up and the Twins, and the Mets have a tough schedule. So maybe if they can just take care of business against some of these teams, maybe the Giants are back in the mix.
I'll be interested to see what the Braves do with the rotation. All eyes are going to be on Reynaldo Lopez, right? He's back from the injury. He was having a brilliant season, but when you have arm issues and then he just struggled with the rehab start, all eyes are on him and on Charlie Morton. Max Fried has had his struggles. The reason I mention it is because they had just brought up, I should say, Grant Holmes, who was excellent. And when you see young guys come up and produce, man, I'd have a hard time sending it back down. I might have asked Uncle Charlie Morton to maybe fill in the long relief role for us and make it more of a young man's game. We'll see, because it's going to come down to pitching for those Braves. Outside of Sale, right? They're relying on a lot of youngsters. They're relying on Spencer Schwellenbach, and not too many people had that on the bingo card.
Yeah, and baseball is so funny because the past couple of years they've been the dominant team, and then they got upset in the small sample size series against Philly. They lose in best of 5 in a series where, hey, all year they were better than Philly. Watch it work the other way this year, and they come in as the underdog, no pressure. Philly's got all the pressure, and watch them. Hey, Sale throws a gem game 1, all of a sudden you're up 1-0 and you're playing with house money. Who knows? Baseball's funny like that.
Ozuna and Olsen both go yard. No surprises here.
Yep.
Right, no surprises. Yeah, again, it's their depth at the back end. We'll see. It's gonna be fun to watch. That's the race to watch, though, for sure. We're only in late August, and there's already some pretty high intensity games and series lining up.
Yep, no doubt. How do you reference the analytics all the time on your appearances? For people that, I don't know, let's just act like the listener's a beginner. Hey, I know ERA, I know batting average, I know home runs. You throw out all these stats, and I don't even know what you mean. How do you start? What are some of the stats to look for? Give like a, I don't know, 30-second minute tutorial on how to start and what to look for.
Sure. Hitters and pitchers, we're going to compartmentalize them both. You make it as simple as possible. And then as you get an understanding, right, like everything in life, I try and template to make it simple. Then you can add into it and get more detailed. Very simple. For pitchers, you like to think about their surface statistics, right? ERA, WHIP, and OPS. Again, I like to use 3 and not 2, because any 2 points can make a line. A third data point will help to invalidate, right? If it's a high ERA and a low WHIP, which you believe, or vice versa. So if you add in something like OPS, that'll help you get a better understanding when they're not in alignment. Then I like to think of pitchers in terms of discipline, right? Do you induce whiffs? Do you throw strikes? Can you induce chases, right? Do you find the zone? Move then over to elevation. Do you keep the ball down, or is it in the air? And then lastly, batted ball quality, which people probably stress the most, but I can tell you from the analytical standpoint, it's the one that is the least predictive, the least sticky, the hardest to repeat. Now, granted, having great control will generally lead you towards weak contact if you're pinning it down on the lower third and towards the corner. But that's it. Make it simple, right? Surface stats, their approach, elevation, batted ball quality. The reason I say that, almost the same for hitters. Batting average, kind of homers and steals, the output, OPS. Then their approach. Do they swing and miss? Do they chase? Do they walk? Do they get on base? Then the same thing. Do they lift the ball? Do they put it on the ground? And then when it is struck, is it well struck? So really keeping it very simple at its very base then helps me to build, off it, right? You use those like sacred ratios where you can continue to build and build and build and build without losing that kind of center point where it'll tip over. So I know I do tend to use a lot of numbers, but I like to tell people we got to have them sync to us, because you got to draw the tapestry. Just really quick, and then we'll go. Is perfect example is people oftentimes quote walk rate for a pitcher, where I'd rather know the percentage of balls that he throws. So just an idea of how little, maybe slight look on analytics and perspective, give you a better idea, right? Ball rate now is isolated to their performance on 3 ball counts, and maybe the umpire maybe more than overall how often do they find the zone.
And where do people go for this? Or like, what's your go-to site? Can people use
mine? Of course, follow me on Twitter at John Laghezza. You can sign up to my Substack, and I can handle all that stuff for you. Again, I started as a professional bettor, so this is my personal war room that I make available for everybody. It's very cheap. It's only $2 a week. But other than that, the free providers are Fangraphs or StatCast, right? Baseball Savant. The problem, of course, and this is what I take a lot of pride in, is finding them and sorting them and formatting them into splits and into time, all the stuff that I do for everybody already. So, I often, not to boast about losing, but I'm proud of my product if the picks win or lose, because it's really about saving subscribers a ton of time. And you really nailed it. That's what it is. It's very difficult to find this wealth of information all in one place where you don't need, 42 Chrome tabs open.
What's your just general thoughts, state of the game? I think you and I get the sense we're about the same age. Baseball has changed a lot with pitch clock, ghost runners in the regular season, minimum batter requirements. A lot of changes. Some of it I like, some of them I don't. I don't know. What's the starting pitchers devalue? Take it whatever direction you go. Just your general state of the game right now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you and I, we probably are pretty simpatico, because I'm with you. All these things I take on a case-by-case basis. I'm not some, absolutist like for tradition. That said, I really like the pitch clock. I didn't know if I would, but I'm also willing to give things a chance. Quick story on that, something I noticed. Had my wife with me watching a game. Now, she's always been around the sports, and we'll have them on. She doesn't hate them, but doesn't love them. And we watched a half inning of baseball this year, and I said, honey, what did you notice? And she said, I don't know, nothing. I said, exactly. You watched the whole half inning without noticing anything. You didn't look around. You didn't break out your phone. You didn't look to take a walk because the guy is taking 45 seconds between pitches. So I do like the giddy up in the game. I believe it's really helped to bring in new viewers. I despise the ghost runner.
Me too.
If they would have said in the 12th inning, we're making that move, I would have said, okay, you know what? Maybe at the 12th inning, we need to start, because then you could make me an argument about player health. And if we're talking about player health, you're going to win that argument against me every time. We need to protect the talent. But they play doubleheaders, so we don't need at 10 innings. We're not ready to gas everybody. I just think I really think it ruins the game. I also think now that we're instituting technology, why the piece that we need the most, which is automatic balls and strikes. Again, I'm not an ABS wonk where I'm looking to fire the umpires into the sun. We have the technology. Let him call the game. And when there are bad calls, let him buzz, a buzzer to the hip. You get a quick reversal, and that's it. Even if there's a challenge system or something, that would be fine too. We have, and now we have these great accounts like Umpire Auditor covers this stuff. I don't know if people are familiar with this or actually have an idea of the totality of it. And I know some are borderline. On average, umpires miss, I don't know if you know this, over 1,000 calls a week.
Wow.
1,000 calls a week. 1,000 calls a week. That's on a good week. I think they just had the first week all season with under 1,000. It was like 995. I just happened to notice. Sometimes it's 1,300 missed calls. You hit a point where it's somewhat unacceptable. Again, as bettors, sometimes we notice these things, right? We have the hairy eyeball on the bad call because it happened and ruined the bet for us. Again, that's part of it. But there are legitimately determinative calls being made the wrong way that are obvious to everybody in the stadium, except for the guy with the authority. And that, I think, has to change. Other than that, I love the game. I wish they would be a little more clear, either about the ball itself or standardize its treatment and handling. Because this is something, again, I've had people orders of magnitude smarter than me on my own pod to talk about this stuff. And it turns out with our technology to measure the ball now has far surpassed the technology being used to make the ball. So therefore, there are inconsistencies in the physical nature of the ball that we now know exist, and we now know impact things, and we haven't really done anything about it. I don't like to be conspiratorial. We've heard people say they changed the balls. I'm not there. What I do think happens is the part they admit, which is we kind of have this ball and it goes in a humidor. And remember, once you take something out of a humidor, it's now going to look to reestablish equilibrium, to sound smart for half a second. So there's just inconsistencies in it. And I think that's why we've seen offense down. And now I actually have a question for you, not to put you in a hot seat. I've been doing this quite a while. There are 15 games today. We're in the middle of August, mind you. Not a single one has a total of 9. Isn't that strange?
It is strange.
Like from a macro standpoint, isn't that strange?
Yes, it is. And I remember not that long ago, I don't know, mid 2000s, the pitchers weren't throwing as hard now. And like when you have guys, and I think people maybe gloss over this fact. When everybody throws 97, 98, it's not about the fastball. It's like the breaking ball's 92 and the changeups, 87. It's just the breaking stuff is so nasty. It's hard to put the ball in play. And yeah, I mean, I remember when totals were 10, 10 and a half, 11 pretty routinely. And it's just, no, it is strange. I mean, look, how many 300 hitters do we have right now? Do you know top of your head? I remember somebody mentioning it the other day.
Wow, I don't. And I think I'd be shocked if is it more than 15? Is it more than a dozen?
I know it's Judge and Soto. It's only a couple guys in the National League. While you're
okay, then I even hear qualified hitters, it's 9. And then Yainer Diaz is at 299. So it's Witt, Judge, Vlad Guerrero, Stephen Kwan, Jordan Alvarez, Marcell Ozuna, Arias, Soto, and Altuve. That's it. I mean,
it's insane.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And then the funny part about that is if we were to ask people, do you know how many guys have 30 home runs? Well, we've given up the average, right, that you kind of really sharply allude to, but we haven't gotten the power. Only 8 players have 30 home runs. So fewer players have 30 bombs than batting 300 right now as we, kind of turn the corner on the season. And I think that goes to what I was saying with the ball, where if we find out that the Rays, again, something they've admitted, so I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, that the seams, when they raise them, not to get to the physics or whatever, it's going to increase drag, which is going to make, increase impedance on the ball, which is why high fly balls are now not going out at the rate they used to. I mean, now the game's just kind of gotten boring in a way, right? It's this all or none. And now we're not even getting the all as much as we want to, right? We're getting barrels that don't go out. And if you get a ball hit at 105 miles an hour at 25 degrees, we want that to be a home run and not out at the track.
Yeah, I just feel like training the pitchers, they've, these guys that train pitchers at all these different levels, driveline, all this stuff, they've kind of cracked the code where they know how to track the shape of the ball and what creates velocity and what creates the like pitching is a science, and they're ahead of it. Where hitting, you're reacting to the pitching, and hitting, I don't know, the teaching of the hitting just hasn't caught up. There is not that analytics for hitting like there is for pitching, where you can just, figure out a way to maximize.
You know what it is? You know what I think it is? And
what's up?
I want to give credit to, I feel like it's probably Eno Saris. Like when all else fails and you're looking to credit somebody for pitching work, Eno is probably a good, like, default setting. It was about, I think the case study was Jacob deGrom, but it speaks to your perfectly put point. Just don't swing. The second you see something break, just don't swing, because so the chance of it being a strike are lower than the chance of you. Remember, it's not just making contact. You have to be quality contact that has to find grass and all that stuff. So unless there's 2 strikes, you're literally better off anything breaking to force them to throw strikes. This kind of goes to that Tampa Bay Ray theory of pitching. Like when people are saying, oh, the Rays fixed everybody, what they did was just tell pitchers with the filthy stuff you're talking about to stop aiming. They literally told guys, this is out of Tyler Glasnow's mouth, who last I checked is pitching pretty well. They told him, aim for the center of the plate. They're like, dude, you don't really know where it's going. You don't know where it's going. Aim for the center of the plate. It's so filthy. The rest will work itself out. And he said that was with Pitching Ninja. The light bulbs just went off, and that helped him to truly level up. And we've seen that happen across the board. Guys that are filthy, that are no longer trying to pin the bottom corner, they're like, you know what? Can you hit this even if it's in the zone? I'm going to try and meatball it. They can't do it anyway because it's very hard to control. And that has been part of that, success that you've seen. Again, I do agree with you that the pitchers have the upper hand, but I like to look at it in terms of a pendulum. So I'm going to hold out hope that the hitters will have their day in the sun. But man, I couldn't imagine hitting that stuff. I couldn't imagine it,
Yeah, it's almost like you have to hit where you expect the ball to be. Like you have to almost guess which way it's going to break, because if you're trying to, it's almost like, if anyone's ever tried to catch like a butterfly or a bug that's really fast, you can't go at it because the bug's just going to move. You have to kind of guess where it's going to go and hope it goes in your hand. I mean, the stuff is just so natural. Which, getting back to the umpire point, and I want to get to football here in a minute, but I'm a hypocrite, because when it costs me a bet, I'm like, man, these umps stink, get robot umps, which I think is right. But I also think, we see this little box where the pitch is a fraction of an inch off the plate. And it's like, wait, these guys are throwing 99 with movement. I almost feel like the ump, if they stood behind the pitcher, would get a better view. If you've ever been behind a catcher trying to call balls and strikes, it's not that easy. So on the same token, I do have some sympathy for them.
No, I think I don't want to put the onus on them. I do believe they're being set up to fail, especially, I mean, this is especially with, and I don't know if you saw this, this is a rule change they made in season already. So where I'm getting at what's unfair to the umpires is you're now equipping the fans and the TV audience with better technology than you have. That's number one mistake, because now we're able to pinpoint every error that you made. Again, I'm not the type to say if it touches the edge, oh, that's a blown call. We're talking about the pitches that are 5-6 inches off the zone, especially left to right. Those become a little more inexcusable when they get called strikes in the other batter's box.
Yep.
You know, that can be really rough. Everything in this life is about balance. Like, we want the human, but we also want the technology. For me, the answer is very simple. Again, you'll have MLB cry poverty about, workload. God, you could pay some schnook intern, 30 grand a year. He'll sit there and do games nonstop and just help somebody grade. It'd be no problem. The change I was talking about was hitters were doing what we were doing as bettors and checking StatCast in the clubhouse after at bats, then coming out and wrecking the ump for it. And it was creating problems. So MLB said, I don't think you can do that anymore. I think they removed it. You're not allowed to do that anymore. I was reading that. That it's a major issue in game. So, of course, rather than have the ump, rather than get things right, that is the problem, whatever. It's like MLB is like politics, man. All these big structures, they're never actually focused on the goal, where we should just, again, have somebody aid the umpire, let him call the game. I think the vast majority of calls are right, and I don't think we need to correct every hairline miss. That's not what I'm saying. But we've all been there, whether it's a bet or not, favorite team or not. 2 strikes, 2 outs, bottom 9. You just can't have that ball in the other batter's box get called a strike. It really hurts.
Yeah, and I think I've heard, I think it was Boone arguing with an umpire, and sometimes they have these hot mics where you can catch it, and the umps get mad. Hey, don't talk to me about you saw a replay and you noticed it off the play. I don't want to hear about the iPads. I don't have the iPad, so that that ticks the umpires off, which you can understand.
Imagine if he just had his phone.
No, I know. Exactly.
Imagine if he just had a phone. Like, you'd probably, this is what's so sick is,
I agree.
You'd probably do a better job from your couch umpiring off a calibrated, StatCast box, Hawkeye, whatever it is. And that's the real shame, because again, they're doing a fantastic job for a human. There's a lot of jobs we let computers do now, like calculate numbers. Can you imagine if we're like, whoa, we're not gonna. No, we're not going to use the computer to calculate batting average. We'll go get all your numbers and do 2 for 4, 2 for 4, 1 for 3. It's just not practical. Whatever.
I agree. Last minute or two. NFL, any team you think overrated, underrated, take it whatever direction you want to go.
All right. I don't think people like the Jets enough. I think my New York Jets are really in a great spot. And again, this isn't, homerism. We are sad. we're perpetually sad. I was at the opener last year when Rodgers came out with the flag. It was like Hulk Hogan reincarnated, man. I was ripping his shirt off, and that lasted, all of 3 snaps or whatever. That said, their roster front to back is fantastic. I'd like to see a little more help from backup quarterback. I feel like maybe that to your point, generally, I think if we want to be backing teams, right, we're in NFL future season, think about the backup QB, because I think last year taught us a lot about that. If a team doesn't have a good backup quarterback, things can fall apart in a hurry. That said, I think, man, well, everyone's already low on the Patriots. I'm really low on the Patriots. I think I'm really low on the Dallas Cowboys. I'm worried about the CeeDee Lamb situation. I'm also worried outside of CeeDee Lamb. There's not much in that offensive room. I'm a Dak Prescott guy. I like him. I think people are unnecessarily tough on him. I don't think he's a loser. That's not where I was going. I like Dak Prescott. But, man, Cooks and Tolbert, they let go of Pollard to bring back Zeke. They're not explosive. The Cowboys are not explosive. I think they've taken multiple steps back from last year. So even if the defense is good again, I worry if this team can catch up. And I know they're getting Dallas is getting a lot of love off the bus this year that I'm not sure I'm there for.
John, this was long overdue. I appreciate the time here. We got to do this again soon. Let everyone know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, you follow me on Twitter at John Laghezza. Last name Laghezza. And check out my stuff. If you want to pay for the Substack, that's all good. I got football stuff, projections, and advanced statistics, ladder bets. It's a lot. You have to be into it. But if not, the Matthew Berry Betting Life newsletter is free. And if it's free, it's for me. So check it out. And I really appreciate it, man. That was so much fun.
John, appreciate it, man. We'll do it again soon.
Cool.
All right. Thank you to John Laghezza. We will be back Friday. Rate, review, subscribe. See you then.